What do women need in a birthing environment? Diana Corte, the well-known author on women's bodies and birthing, once said, "If I don't know my options, I don't have any." And that is how most women go through their pregnancy and their birthing. They just don't know their options. Let's look at two birthing stories. One, a wonderful woman named N, and the second, my own case. N's story. N has a crackling sense of humor, and she's really the warm heart of a large extended family. When she was pregnant with her first child, she thought she got along quite well with her doctor and was happy to give birth under her care. These were pre-internet days, but yet she tried to read all that she could and really be ready for the birth. She was excited, but also a little bit nervous. On her due date, the doctor called her in at 7 in the morning and told her not to eat anything. She went in and then was told that if her contractions don't start on her due date, she would be induced. The entire day, she saw the doctor briefly for a short visit. The rest of the time, she was alone. At 5 p.m., she recalls that she got really hungry and thirsty and a bit dizzy. And after much hemming and hawing and asking the doctors, the nurses finally gave her a little bit of juice. At 6 p.m., she was asked to go up to the birthing room for a checkup. The room was a complete shock. 13 years later, she still has perfect recall. It was a small, dirty room. There was bloodstains on the walls, she said. There was only a tiny plastic curtain separating her from the noises outside in the hospitals. And it was a curtain that the nurses kept pushing open every time they went in and out. Outside, there was a wooden bench where the hospital doctors and other medical attendants would sit and chat and gossip during their downtime. So it was very, very noisy. And here she was, as she says in her own words, naked from the waist down, feet up in stirrups, feeling completely vulnerable. Finally, the doctor came in and said, "Oh, I'm just checking something," put her hand in, and then I felt the most excruciating pain, and says, the doctor had broken her bag of water without asking her, without any permission. The doctor went away and N was left screaming in pain. The nurses told her to just shut up and bear it. Finally, at midnight, the doctor came and asked her if she wanted a C-section. What was I going to do at that point? N said. What did I know? So of course I said yes. The awful callous treatment that she experienced did not stop here. Post-operation, she barely saw her baby for more than 2 days before she actually held him in her arms. At feeding time, a nurse came in and just demanded that the baby be fed. She reached over and just pressed my breast really hard without asking or anything. It was so shocking, and said. There was no skin to skin, no bonding, nothing. Sadly, N's case is not rare. When I was doing research for my book, Mindful Parenting, I heard hundreds of these kinds of stories, all so painful to listen to, and has now become a passionate advocate to new parents to really push them to understand what they're getting into and to really know their options. Let me now tell you my story. I had heard so many horror stories about birthing, including my mother's own experience. That, combined with the unknowingness of birth, made me terrified of the whole thing. I was terrified of the pain. So when I was pregnant, my husband and I decided to do a thorough survey of all the hospitals in the city. They all had a similar pattern: beautiful rooms, lovely cooling colors, nurses in starched uniforms. But all the control seemed to be in the hands of the doctor. That felt very intimidating. I didn't like it. Our lowest point was when we went to a new women's hospital. They guaranteed me 100% pain-free delivery. Now, even I, with all my fear and aversion about birthing, began to wonder, 100% pain-free? What kind of drugs were they going to pump into me and my baby for me to have 100% pain-free delivery. Luckily for us, friends had just given birth naturally. And like all new converts, they were really enthusiastic about their story. That started our experience and complete conversion into natural birthing. Now, the new birth center that we went to was in a shabby building, and the team was very small, a team of midwives. Our families didn't even know what midwives meant. We had to understand and explain that. They were pretty shocked that there wasn't a medical doctor giving birth to their first precious grandchild. But here is what won us over: the detailed explanations of the natural birthing process, the mixture of the preciousness of birth with scientific facts, and the combination of just really caring, not just for my husband, but also giving lots of time to my mother and mother-in-law to calm all the fears and to answer all their questions. Pregnant friends had also gone through really difficult times in the checkup process. Long waits in crowded halls with no clean bathrooms, and then the meeting with the doctor is just a 10-minute appointment where the doctor would not listen and necessarily answer questions, but a number of tests and medicines would be prescribed. In contrast, my birthing classes and checkup sessions were full of helpful information. My questions were answered, and it felt as though you're catching up with old friends over coffee, really relaxed. My birthing experience itself was incredible. It was a long labor, and yes, there was pain, a lot of pain, especially at the end. But there were also these moments of such preciousness, watching the dawn break come through in a small window early in the morning, sitting and just chatting in between contractions with the midwives. That was incredible. Imagine banter during contractions. They would tell me stories of the other births they'd experienced and stories from their own lives. There was so much comfort in the ordinariness of it all. There was also an incredible, empowering part of that childbirth that I will remember forever. It's the time when the thinking mind shuts down and the body takes over. It does what women's bodies have done for centuries all over the world. It gives birth. My baby was in my arms even before the umbilical cords were cut. That skin-to-skin contact has led to a precious bond with no words and lasted for years later. Without a C-section, I was able to leave the birthing center in a day. I was home, I could walk around, I could lift and carry the baby. It was such a swift recovery. Look at the contrast between the two stories. The shock, the pain, and just the utter misery and wretchedness of the first one, and the calmness and the joy of the second. Every woman deserves a birthing story like mine. Every woman needs to know her options. Yes, C-sections are medically necessary. They are there for emergencies. Yes, there might be times when medicines are needed in the whole birthing process. But by and large, we've forgotten what a normal birth is, let alone a natural birth. Things need to change in a woman's birth environment, in where and how she gives birth. Now, I realize that my story is one of privilege right now, that I had the economic ability to go and survey hospitals. I had the education or the strength to actually ask doctors questions. That's not possible for all women everywhere. Most women in India and most women in developing countries would give birth in a government-funded public hospital. Or if they're not in cities or towns, they'd give birth at home, which is often a mud floor of a hut. Giving birth in a medically safe environment and secure environment is still a rarity in countries like India. So unless they get really lucky, the experience of giving birth will be like the first story I told you, not the second, not like mine. But it does not have to be that way. What needs to change? What can we do to improve the birth environment for a mother to be? What does she want? What does she need? Three things come to mind: time, privacy, and care. Let's take time. It takes time for a woman to give birth, and women should be given that time. Parents who sign up for a C-section, and this is a global growing trend globally, don't realize that it's a major operation with long recovery periods and the potential for serious complications. Parents are also coerced into C-sections. Often doctors and hospitals persuade them into C-sections because it's much quicker for the hospital, and of course it brings in a lot more money. This is where the training of our doctors, nurses, and public policy comes in. A hospital should count its success in the happy birth and an easy birth for mother and child, not in the quickness of turnaround times and the profit per birth. Not giving a laboring woman time to give birth can lead to what's called the cascading effect or the waterfall effect of interventions. A fetus is checked multiple times continuously. That leads the woman to get anxious. If she gets anxious, then her contractions begin to slow down. And when her contractions slow down, medicines are given to speed things up. That's not in keeping with the body. So induction is advised. This in turn can quickly turn into a C-section or just much longer rates of recovery and therefore a longer hospital stay. So let us remember the importance of time. The second is privacy. We often joke in India that there's no sense of privacy, at least in the Western sense. That your whole story, your whole life is open not just to your immediate family, but to friends, to relatives, acquaintances, neighbors. Everyone knows all the details of your life. This works really well in times of crisis because people come together immediately to help. But in times of birth, a woman needs privacy. It could be something as simple as a curtain drawn around the hospital bed and kept closed. It could be a small place that's really clean, a quiet place. The laboring woman should be allowed to have whoever she wants around her, not who the hospital decides, or worse yet, annoying relatives who demand to be there. She should feel in control of her body and her surroundings. A secure, clean space, however small, it is not much to ask for. The third is care. Pregnant women go through a lot of humiliation and embarrassment from doctor visits and during labor instead of the love and care they deserve and the quiet. Can we change things so that the rural health worker, the doctor, and the nurse stop seeing a pregnant woman as a patient? She's not sick. She's just pregnant. What she needs is support from her husband, her family, and whatever medical system she has chosen to interact with and access. She needs to feel a clear sense that her opinions, her questions, and her emotions matter. The doctor or nurse's tone of voice matters. A gentle massage or holding of her hand during labor matters. Murmured encouragement and guidance during labor. All forms of care are so important. So let us remember that access to emergency medical care is important, that in a number of cases it's necessary and a natural birth is not possible. But for a vast majority of expectant mothers, at the end of the day, birthing is a natural, normal act. We should be able to give them time, privacy, and care to women all over the world, regardless of the economic circumstance, regardless of whether the birth is in a government hospital, a private hospital, or in their houses. They need, want, and deserve time, privacy, and care while they are pregnant and while they are giving birth. As parents, as doctors, and as nurses, we need to change the system. Let us build a time where instead of saying, I don't know my options, or instead of feeling, I don't have any options, pregnant women are able to say, I know my options, and this is what I choose. Thank you.